Jim Bottum is the Chief Information Officer and Vice Provost for Computing and Information Technology at Clemson University. In this role, he focuses on high-performance computing and communication, as well as collaborating with state and national governmental entities. During his tenure at Clemson, Computer World named him one of the premier 100 IT leaders in 2007. Storage Magazine featured him on the cover in the January 2008 edition. Clemson University's Palmetto cluster has appeared at number 60 in the world's top 500 computing sites, alongside Clemson's Computational Center for Mobility Systems, which ranked at number 100. Prior to coming to Clemson, Mr. Bottum was the first CIO and VP for computing at Purdue, where he led the university's central IT organization to be recognized by Newsweek. Currently, he serves on the NSF Advisory Committee for Cyberinfrastructure and is a presidential fellow with Internet 2. Ladies and gentlemen, Jim Bottum.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'm a member of TSA PreCheck. So I'm in your database. Where's the charter fellow? So did you say business only? You bring fiber to businesses only? Okay. I was going to give you my address if you were bringing it to houses. So you'll find this hard to believe. That's my last two jobs, my current job and my last job. But I've actually been working longer than 13 years. I know I don't look that old, but the prior 20 plus years I was in research, helped to stand up and build and develop a national supercomputing center. So getting into the CIO business a dozen years ago is very new to me. Can I just ask a question? How many folks here are from the private sector? Please raise your hand. I think there's more than that, actually. I looked at the list. So the majority of you are from the private sector. How many from higher ed? A few. Public sector? None? Okay. All right, so I'm going to give a different kind of talk than I'm used to giving. I usually talk about what we're doing, you know, and what we're doing for the university. I'm going to talk about our staff today, which is actually the most important part of the business. But Tracy's going to do I don't have a clicker, so Tracy's going to put the slides up. Okay, so compare this to your IT business. This is who we have to serve. 20,000 students who all bring their own devices. Right, and devices is the answer for most of them too. They bring multiples. 5,000 faculty and staff who support research, education, outreach, and service, and we have to do ERP systems too. That was one of the biggest fears I had about getting into the CIO business, was having to, because I heard all these horror stories of how this system failed at Michigan and this person got fired, and that was one of my biggest fears. But we're in the middle of 3 ERP projects at Clemson right now. So the first few slides, I kind of want to give you the context of what our staff work in and what they have to deal with. We also are now in the dealing with other state agencies. So for example, the Health and Human Services, the Medicaid system, Clemson runs that, and that may not have been obvious to a lot of folks. We have the anybody here at the Department of Revenue? Okay, they want to start utilizing our services. So we have a steady stream now, it seems like, of other state agencies wanting to get involved. The gentleman who introduced me mentioned our Palmetto cluster. I was essentially brought to Clemson to get high-performance computing up and going. Once we did, we had other universities knocking on the door. So now we have over 100 faculty around the state who are using our high-performance computing facilities, and some companies too. We also have corporate partners. We are a Dell Intel Center of Excellence in Next Generation Computing. That's what I usually go into a lot of detail. I'm just going to flip through this stuff real fast. And Clemson is a land grant and has offices in every county in the state. So we have to, in some way or another, support all the activities that are out there. Kurt Russell, sitting next to me at the table, works up here in our ICAR facility. This is not meant to show you anything except what our lines of business are. The bottom blue color is the funding we get from the university. That's the tuition and funds they get from the state. The red is the student fees, and we actually let our students manage their own fees. When I first came there, they asked me, the students came and visited and said, what do you spend our technology fee on? And I said, I don't have a clue. I'm still trying to figure out what, you know, because we had to merge a bunch of organizations together, had to figure out what the budgets were. So we went on a discovery process with the students, figured out they had a flat tech fee for 12 years. And one bright young student in the front row said, haven't your costs gone up in the past 12 years? And not only had costs, but we looked at what the baseline services were to students 12 years ago and what they were then, and it was a vast difference too. So they went to the Board of Trustees and recommended an increase in the tech fee. And we, over time, have let them figure out how to manage it. The green is SLAs we do with various people on campus and things like that. The purple is auxiliaries. We run our own phone system, and we have a computer store on campus. And the next big chunk there in that aqua color is the Health and Human Services, and the one on top is grants. And that's sponsored research and mostly for infrastructure. Go ahead, Tracy. This is where our staff are, 353 staff spread over 4 counties, and there's history there. Not a lot of logic, but there's a lot of history. At one point, 2/3 of our staff were off campus, so that makes it interesting, especially when there's no parking on campus. If you've been to Clemson during the week, you two have, there is no place to park. So that's always interesting, trying to figure out how to work with people in that environment. But what got me into thinking, you know, one of the biggest issues I saw when I got there was communication. We were not connected to the internet. That was an issue in and of itself. We'll talk about that in a minute. But it was this kind of communication. These folks they thought of themselves as being in different organizations. Go ahead, Tracy. So I want to flip through a few things and just, you know, and I think you're all in technology. Some of you are in sales, I heard that. But basically, it's constant change. And I came into an environment where they hadn't had a CIO in several years. And my predecessor died while in the job, and he had a prolonged illness, and then they left the job open after that. So that's going to lead into the leadership development we're talking about. But this is the kind of change. That's the high-performance computing benchmarks since we stood up high-performance computing in December of 2007. That's a change we inflict on the faculty. They actually want it. On the right, that's just our facilities in the NOC out in Anderson County. Go ahead, Tracy. This is our user base, and you can see that maps back to the December 2007 when there was no computing. We're up over 1,000 users now. That's a mixture of faculty and students. And the red is actually, in the last couple of years, down on the bottom, that's the external ones, the other universities around the state. Storage, they mentioned the Storage Magazine article. That's a real pretty picture, if you haven't seen that one. But yeah, we've going through major transitions there as well. One of the questions I got in the mail ahead of time had to do with off-site storage. Go ahead, Tracy. And network. You see, when I came back in FY07, and you can see there was literally no network connectivity back in 05 and 06 up on the top. And the whole university, almost 20,000 students and faculty and staff were sharing 100 megabits at the time. Think about that. What do you charter bring into a house now? 60 megabits you can bring in? You can get 100. For a reasonable price probably too. But you don't come down my street, so. I wish you did. 215 Horsehead Point Drive, Seneca. But anyway, we actually went out and bought optical fiber back in FY07 and worked with Charter and some others to get that. And we bought fiber up and down I-85 and then had some very generous Clemson alum donate us fiber around the university. So we essentially built our own network and we connected to Internet 2 and the National Lambda Rail in Charlotte and Atlanta. And we were flat at 10 megabits or 10 gigabits for those years. And just in the last few months, we've upgraded to what's known as the innovation platform. I think in the introduction they mentioned the Internet 2. That's a project we're working on with them. We get external funds to do this, but we're at 100 gigabits now and going up in FY13 to 260. And that's all research traffic. We have the different layers. Go ahead, Tracy. The other way. Okay, and then the other thing that our staff have to deal with is this, and your staff probably are the same, and you may not worry too much about the MOOCs. If you're in the university now, everybody thinks the MOOCs are going to put the universities out of business because you do the value proposition and you can go to school a lot cheaper, do it all online and all that stuff, and be one of 10,000 students and some faculty guy from Stanford's class, and that sort of thing. So there's all this circling around, in addition to all the change that's going on, bringing in somebody like me to make it even worse, and then to change more because they want to get into the research business. And then, so they hear that, and then they hear about the cloud too. Everything's going to the cloud. And what does that mean? And we could have a couple hours discussion just on that. I got to keep track of the time. Okay. But so this is kind of a metaphor. Now, believe it or not, there was a cover on that. That was, that's raised floor. That's what was underneath. And when I came down from Purdue, I had a president at Purdue that, here's a good ERP story for you. He said, I've been a president, this is my third university. I've never spent a nickel on ERP and I don't intend to start here. And he looks you right in the eye when he says that too, with the finger. And he also said the same thing about a data center, because we had 2 crummy data centers at Purdue. I mean, really, really crummy. He also told me he wasn't going to spend a nickel on data centers. So Clemson invited me down, and I went out to this facility in Anderson County, and all I saw was space, 20,000 square feet of raised floor. And I thought, wow, this is paradise, because if you're in this business, you got to keep up with your users. And the faculty that are coming in now, they're all dealing with data. I don't have and maybe I do have some of the charts to show you on that, but this is a metaphor for the way the infrastructure was. I couldn't get anybody to show me what the network looked like. So we finally put an inventory together, and we had a pie chart. And my CTO, who was up here, I guess, a couple of months speaking to you, you might have heard this already, he called it an archaeology of Cisco gear. There was one of everything in there. Even I think there was a fuzzball on there too, if you go back that far with networking. So it was like this, but the staff were like this too. One of the consulting reports I was given, and these are great people. The people that work in the IT organization at Clemson are great, but they had been sort of held down for so long that I could start a sentence and say, and we didn't do this because, and they'd go, no money. They were so used to hearing no money. And, and they were conditioned. And I told one guy, I said, you're like, you're like fleas in a jar, and you jump up and hit your head so many times that you stop jumping that high. You have to jump because you get some exercise, I guess, but you take the lid off and they don't jump out because they've been conditioned to think that way. So go ahead, Tracy, go to the next one. So getting into professional development, not only did they not have what I'd call the horizontal training, they didn't even have vertical. And what I mean there is, somebody mentioned databases. You have to keep your DBAs up on the latest Oracle or whatever it is you're using. You have to get that kind of, they didn't even give them this kind of training. And the answer was, if the staff asks the manager to go to training, they'd say, I'm not going to pay for you to go and get trained so you can get a job with somebody else. That was actually what they said across the board. So we didn't even have vertical training. We've got that going on now. We got, figured out how to get money for that. Horizontal was not even on the radar. Learning soft skills and how to talk to people and be nice. One of the consulting reports I got said, the IT group is dictatorial and non-responsive. And it went downhill from there, okay? So, so anyway, we got that training going. And what I'm going to get into in a minute here and talk about is the leadership program that we have going on now that got really jump-started by a phone call. I typically do not take, well, Tracy knows, I don't take cold calls. This was a cold call, okay? And for some reason, I picked up the phone. And it was somebody from the Clemson MBA program and said, we have some slots in a program. Go ahead. So, we got into in addition to the leadership, we got into project management and service management and things like that. So we started fleshing out a program, but what was still missing was this kind of the human side of things. And the phone call led to me sending out a note to a mail list and just saying, anybody want to go to this leadership program? Some of you might have taken it. It's in the summer in Greenville. It was 2 weeks, Kat?
It's 1 week.
1 week. And the staff came back from that, and it was interesting. I think we sent like 8 people to it. 2 of them left, so they must have been thinking about doing something else. They went off and did something else. One of them is the CIO with a company in Greenville now. And so it was good in a lot of ways. I'm one who believes that turnover is not necessarily bad. And I think in this person's case, it was definitely good. He's very happy with what he's doing now. And but I got a handwritten card from one person. He said, "This program changed my life." And then the next thing, they want to take me over to lunch, and we go to lunch and we sit down and. They start telling me, we want to bring this into the organization. So I'm thinking, wow, bottom up instead of top down. This is great, because they want to do it. And we had some negotiations, we'll do this internally, but we're going to do it with these professionals too. So, basically what's happened is, go ahead, Tracy. These were some of the goals that we had for this kind of a program, breaking down the silos. This is how bad it was, okay? I can remember going over to meet with a group, and they were one of the off-campus groups, and I said, tell me your 5 biggest issues to deal with. And one of them was, it was something about a server. I said, have you called this person? Those people out there won't help us. I said, you mean your IT colleagues? They were in another county. They're in 2 different counties. Pick up the phone, call, hey, can we get a server for this? Sure. Okay, this is a phone, here, dial the phone number. You don't even have to put a 9 or anything in because it's a university number. And it was that kind of stuff, just kind of jump-starting them, getting them talking to each other. But that doesn't scale. Me going around and doing that kind of thing, but it helped to assess the issue we had. And people weren't talking to each other, and they thought they would refer to the campus as those people over there, and that kind of thing. And our data center is out, it's on Lake Hartwell in a beautiful setting in a research park, and you can forget you work for a university by spending a fair amount of time out there. So breaking down silos, broaden the staff's knowledge base. I'll never forget, I was over by our help desk, which is now in the library. It used to be over in an old decrepit building. And that was in that decrepit building. And I heard one of our staff telling a student that we're having network problems. So I texted my CTO. I said, we have any network problems? No. I'm thinking, why is this person saying that? They don't even know what the network is. And here they are working on the help desk. So how do we get this cross-dialogue going? How do we have the people that are front-facing to, the users understand how the place works? We started doing tours of the data center. And I found out that people didn't even know where the systems were or what the systems were and things like that. So We started doing some of those things, but aligning strengths with opportunities, empowering individuals, that was the hardest thing to do, was getting people to feel empowered. And then once you get to that point, how do you start mentoring them? And I think one thing where I still see we need a lot of development is the last one, and I added that one in there, to encourage and develop critical thinkers. And I noticed, and I think it's maybe a cultural thing, but people are very, very polite in the South. I grew up in New York, and they're very direct, and they may be critically thinking, and maybe what I should have said there was not encouraging critical thinking, but expressing your critical thinking. You can sugarcoat it. I know what's that saying? Bless his heart. I know what that means. Now, I've been here long enough, okay? So I know what that means. So you still sugarcoat it, but get the point across, okay? You don't have to go like they do in New York. Learning outcomes, we did improve internal communication. That's the biggest thing. People actually know people in other groups now, and this program has done that. Increased self-awareness. They have them take this personality test. I had to take it too. And you get classified a certain way. They were hanging these up. I mean, this is the first time they ever realized, wow, I didn't know I thought that way. And I didn't know you were supposed to talk to people and these things. They started developing in that way. Emotional intelligence, less fear, willing to take a risk. Very risk averse. They were that way at Purdue too. There was this fear of retribution. They said, what kind of retribution? What are you afraid of? But it was just, they're not going to let you sit at the lunch table or something. What are you afraid of? But it was breaking some of that down too, increasing creativity, and then getting this coaching and mentoring embedded in the culture. Tracy, go ahead. And actually, we've had offshoot programs come out of this. We weren't recognizing people the way we should be, and celebrating successes, recognizing. We started a student intern program, and some staff came to me one day and they said, that's great, you're starting a student intern program. How about one for us? Kind of cross-training and that type of thing. So that's actually coming out of the program. And Clemson in general is adopting some of the things that are coming out of here, like onboarding. Onboarding was not done. It wasn't even, they didn't recognize the word. And here's what some of the staff are saying about it. Feel empowered, they felt like we respected them because we wanted to invest in them. And people hadn't done that before. And you can read what they're saying, but it's, what are we, a year into this now, Kat? Yeah, we're about a year into it. We're rethinking now what's phase 2 of this. About, a little less than half of the staff have gone through it. We may want to target some people to go through it, people who haven't done it yet. A couple of the ERP groups couldn't do it because, when you're on one of those replacement projects, you can't take any time off and that sort of thing. So we're thinking about that now. And I'll just wrap up with this, but here's what I feel probably is as good as anything about is the fact that Clemson is leading this consortium. This is a funded national program, and most of those are brand name universities up there. You can read them. The one you may not know is the one in Florida, and we started out working with just one university there. They've got a little consortium, they call it SIRCA, Sunshine State Education and Research, something or other. And so we work with all of them, but we've got funded now to actually implement a program where what we did on campus and aggregating all the computing on campus, we're now aggregating across these different schools. And Clemson's leading that, and our staff. And I couldn't be more proud of them because they literally are the thought leaders of this whole activity. And we had a showcase. National Science Foundation's funding this. The S is for science, so guess what? You have to show you're impacting. The science project that was picked was from a faculty member from Clemson's forestry department. And what he's been able to do with the computing we've implemented at Clemson is take his research from just a few counties in South Carolina to the whole entire Southeast. And he's expanding even farther. And that's what, we don't buy computing for computing's sake, and it doesn't sit there idle. What you think of the scientists, the researchers, just like the staff that got stuck in the jar and couldn't jump out because they told them we didn't have any money over and over. Well, these folks dumb down their research to fit into whatever the computation they have. And so what we're doing here is we're taking the lid off for them too. And Rob, that's the faculty member in forestry, he and his wife are taking a sabbatical and taking their kids. They're driving down the Mississippi River. So he's now going to expand their research into the rest of the country, starting, you know, in the middle this summer. So anyway, that's, you know, we went from that kind of jumbled mess to now our folks are actually leading a lot of these initiatives. And the program has been fantastic, and we got some time for discussion.
13 minutes.
There we go. Okay.
Really, if you've got questions, raise your hand.
There were 3 questions submitted. I can, while you're thinking, I can kind of go, if I remember those. Tracy's got them over there. Yes, sir.
How do I build a team of IT ninjas?
Start hiring out of this room.
Yeah. I think it's, I would say to build a team is, you know, getting some common purpose. And you saw that first slide I showed, the mixed bag of stuff that we do. You know, you got the students, you got the faculty, you're running an $800 million business, so you got your ERP and all that. Creating a climate where people feel like they're part of the same thing. You know, obviously the way we're doing it is we're using a program that's now a modified version of what Clemson's MBA program has done. But I think it can't just be like training and everything. It's projects and coming up with things that people can work on together. So I would say, you know, it's a mixture of, you know, I don't know what your situation is, but I think it's getting people feeling like it's the old NASA thing, you know, yeah, I'm working on a bench here, but we're putting somebody up on the moon. You know, having that common vision and goal to go towards. One of the reasons I went to Clemson in the first place was, I mean, when they called me up, all I could remember was, I spent 15 years in Illinois and I was a Bears fan. And remember the Fridge? He played for the Bears and I knew he went to Clemson. That was all I could remember about it. But they called me up and they said, we want to be a top 20 public university. And we need high performance computing. We need some way to attract research faculty to the university. We've done everything we can at the undergraduate level. We've optimized all that. We need to do this. And that's what drew me to it. And I think building the common goals and then getting the right balance. There's cultural issues in there. You know, I mean, one of the things we're wrestling with now is, do we make it mandatory for, you know, the other 150 or so that haven't gone through this? You know, so that's basically, you know, trying to, you know, pull together common directions and, you know, giving people. I found that the morale is always the best when the vision's clear, people know what they're doing that feeds into it. They have resources and the tools, personal, whatever kind of tools, that they have a reasonable expectation that they can be successful. And they feel like the management is clearing the path for them and not dropping things for them to stumble over.
You're really referring to a team that's already assembled versus one that's not assembled yet. We're having a difficult time assembling a team. We're having a hard time finding people with the right talents.
Oh, recruiting.
We're having a difficult time doing
Oh, yeah, that could be a lot of, you know. We have a hard time getting. We have a project up here over at ICAR. We're building an eligibility module for the Medicaid, for the next generation Medicaid system. And we elected to do that in Greenville just because we thought it'd be too hard to attract that many people that fast to get the project done to Clemson.
Can you give me any information on interns in Clemson?
Yeah, sure. Why don't we just give you a card and you can contact me? Companies, if I was running a company, I would want to, particularly in this business, I would want to tap into something like that. We just had the guy who's taking over all software for Dell in last week, and they pulled him out of retirement. He had retired from IBM. Tom Kendra, his name is, and I forget the guy that's over everything. Dell's bought about $3 billion worth of software businesses, so these guys have to make it work. And that's exactly what he's ready to write a check for interns. So we can give you information on that.
Thank you.
Sir?
You may not have had this problem in Clemson, but if you have, how have you approached the problem of people who think that the way it was when you got here was just great?
Was what?
Was just great.
Didn't like change.
Didn't like to change.
Ooh, well, this is the second time. So to talk a little bit, real quickly, take you through this. I learned on the job at Purdue. I was their first CIO, and that was my first CIO job. So we practiced on each other. And I had spent the previous 15 years building a national center where when I turned 40, there were only 2 other people out of 400 that were over 40. I mean, it was a children's crusade. Literally, most of the people we have were in their 20s. So, you know, and a lot of them were students. And the good thing about students is, and really young people like that, is they don't know that you can't do things. You know, staff that have been working for a while, no, you can't do that, you can't do that. And so I did it differently at Clemson than I did at Purdue. I learned a lot of lessons there. I learned that and politicians go to Washington and you see how they age. They try to change the culture and, you know, they don't, and then they leave, and the same bureaucracy is there as when they went. But basically, I don't know, how do you change a culture? I think the first thing I learned at Purdue, and a consultant told me this, you're not going to change everybody, okay? So you're going to change a percentage. So I think you do things with people that are willing, you get things done, you build successes, and you try to attract people to that. Does that make sense to you, what I'm saying? And let me give you an example in networking, okay? So we're funded under a program called Global Environment for Network Innovation. It's software-defined networking. It's the next generation. It's going to be totally different. You're not going to have to pay as much for routers and switches as you do now because they're going to be commodity parts and it's going to be software-driven. And is that going to be next year? Probably not. 2 years, maybe 3, 4, 5, somewhere in there, but it's coming. And even the doubters of a couple of years ago are agreeing now and trying to figure out how to orchestrate it to their advantage. But we put students in the network group. And so the students don't know things can't work. So one of the students went up to one of our network engineers and said, "Can we do this?" And he said, "No, you can't." And he gave him all the, Cisco training rules why you can't do that. And the student went away on a piece of paper and came back and said, "Here's how you do it." And that did more to change the culture than me in there telling them, "Hey, the culture is going to change." It was kind of bottom up. And I think to the extent you can do that, the kind of bottom up as opposed to top down, that's been my approach. And realizing you're not going to change everybody, but have enough examples out there that people. One of the areas I struggle in is the folks that work in our learning technologies area, they don't have the same kind of belief yet that they can impact things like the folks in the research area. And I scratch my head at that and I think, wow, we're bringing in money over here. You saw the funding charts. We bring in $3, $4, $5 million a year now in grants into the IT organization. And that's to do new things and everything. And these people can do it too. And so you know, I'm still kind of scratching my head on that one a little bit, but we got to get a success in there, and so, you know, and help to change that culture, because they're a little bit resistant to change, and they bear the brunt of it too. They got to implement it. Like we have a Blackboard, a learning management system. You know, the students want a thing called Canvas. Blackboard is last century technology, but it's going to be an enormous effort to convert over to this century technology. The way our staff, the way my assistant has to go in, and it's almost like gold mining to go and find files. When, you know, you got Box today, you just hit it and poof, there they are. And, you know, and getting out of that is not easy. And I don't know if I'm answering your question, but we haven't got it all figured out. But I know students and new ideas and things like that, energy and successes and exemplars are always very useful. Yes, sir.
Well, just kind of on that, you know, we always have to ask ourselves, how do we like change? And then we have to understand who we are leading, and then how are we dealing with the change that my boss wants is part of that. We're kind of doing the same thing what you're doing right here, and we've kind of grasped on looking at, you know, the humility of a leader, servant side of a leader instead of a tutorialship type thing. And we've kind of implemented building a relationship of grace towards our people. You know, it doesn't always have to be my idea when they come with something, although I know mine's better than theirs. You know, it's letting their creativity, you know, like this, and in that way, the fear starts disappearing. You know, you're always going to have the ones who do fear, but the fear starts disappearing.
Yeah. I just had to move somebody out of a job, and it was a tough one, but it had to get done, and I know what you're saying, and it was, when you were saying what you just said, it reminded me of that, and a lot of the reasons, you know, that you said was why I had to do that, and that's always painful. But I like what you said. What's your company?
We're at Clemson University.
Oh, okay.
We're actually presenting kind of the same thing as you caused next week, so
Yeah.
may quote you.
Okay.
Last questions.
Yeah.
Is Clemson working on anything regarding the power generation issues that the nation is having and the way of securing information technology against any kind of foreign encroachment, if you will? Any kind of project with that?
So you started out on power, and then you got into cybersecurity. Is the question more of a power generation, or is it a cybersecurity?
Cybersecurity involving the power generation. Or protecting.
One of the problems there is that the faculty that get funded for that are often held to NDA and what they're working on. So I can say that there's a fair amount of cybersecurity research going on campus. Typically, the folks that are funded, like we have some from agencies that don't even want you to say their initials, okay? And they don't want you to say, I mean, literally, one of my staff and a faculty member got a grant from one of these agencies. I couldn't even go into the review. They wouldn't let me in. You know, and so that's how, the answer in general is yes. We have Dell bought SecureWorks. It's a big security company. Incidentally, they have, the CTO there told me, he's a Clemson alum, 500 jobs they can't fill. So if your kids, you know, if your kids are going to school or anything, that's an area that has tremendous growth in it. But we're working with them now. We're going to set up a security operations center like our NOC, only it's going to be, you know, testing out software and, you know, in a real world environment and that kind of stuff. So we're doing some applied things and some, you know, more fundamental research things. But there's no big project on power. I can tell you that much.
All right, let's say thank you very much.
Thank you.